Greece just now defaulting $1.8 billion that it owed to the IMF. And remember, billions more in obligations that owed this summer. This gambit could send that nation back to the Stone Age. But the big question is, will it take the rest of the world along for the ride? In the meantime, we could see a rapid move to kick Greece out of the EU. And it's unlikely demands from the Troika will not change. In fact, the Troika stands firm. They've got a 10-page proposal. This is what they want from Greece. We're talking about the EU, European Central Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. They outlined their demands. To me, they don't seem unreasonable, but they are daunting. They want to see a budget for this year, for 2016 and 19. They want to see what the fiscal strategy is. They want to reform with the value-added tax. They want financial structure and measures, pension reform, public administration, and, of course, anti-corruption, tax administration reform, financial sector reform, and, without a doubt, labor market reform. Hey, we've got a great panel to help us sort all of this out, including billionaire investor and famous risk taker Wilbur Ross. Wilbur, I got to start with you. You got about a $1.7 billion bet, the third largest bank in Greece. Can you stick out your hand? I want to see how nervous you are. Look at that. Is amazing. You're like Wall Street's version of Cool Hand Luke. What the heck is going on? You know, $1.7 billion. How come you're so cool about this?
I practiced.
Well, you know, you're famous for taking bets, making investments in areas that people have left for dead or thought never had a chance to come back, and you've got an impressive track record. You think it's going to work out in the end here?
I do. I think the Greek people will figure out that a no vote means no to euro, no to a future for Greece, no to banks, no to almost everything.
Do they need a week? Do they need this period now? I don't know if the ECB is going to play even harder ball. 60 bucks, 60 euros now at the ATM, maybe nothing tomorrow. Do they need the next few days of really living under this pressure to really make them decide?
Yeah, frankly, I think if it had been a longer lag, there'd been a better chance to get the people educated and they would really feel the problem. 60 euros a day, if every Greek adult took out 60 euros a day, that's $3.5 billion per week. The Greek banks can't afford that for very long. There's almost no liquidity in the whole country.
I actually read where they ran out of I think it was the 20-euro notes, and they just have a few 50 laying around, and some of these are empty. And it just feels like you have all their neighbors, including Spain, their prime minister, said, guys, not only do we implore the Greek people to vote yes, accept this, but get rid of the people running this country. Is that something that you'd like to see happen as well?
Well, I think that's up for the people to decide who's their leadership, but I do think a no vote is a deadly thing. Committing economic suicide is not a patriotic act.
Nevertheless, you poured a lot of money into the third largest bank in Greece. As the National Bank of Greece, is that the largest?
Yeah.
So that's like $1 stock that used to be like a $700 stock. I mean, this is the riskiest kind of move possible, and you made it predicated on people having this self-preservation thing. I mean, essentially, is that where the essence of this investment came from?
Well, it came from several things. We think Greece is a real country and has a real potential for reform. Under Samaras, they were actually starting to make some pretty good reforms. Then he miscalculated politically, called an early election, and the Tsipras group came in.
Jim, you've been around for a while. You've been involved in all kinds of, high-risk gambits like this and moments of truth, if you will. Again, we think, and to Wilbur's point, that people don't commit economic suicide. However, we have seen it over and over and over again throughout the history of mankind, particularly in the West. And not too long ago, even here, where you had Alan Greenspan saying he cannot believe that Wall Street killed themselves to the degree that they did. So it's not like this can't get worse.
Well, usually people ultimately end up acting rationally, and what Wilbur predicted should happen if people really think about it. But this has become a very highly emotional debate. It's politicized, and he's basically saying to the people, vote no because look what it's going to do to your pensions. It's not going to have been a series of debates with the issues, so you could get an accident. they could in fact vote no. I'm not predicting it, but it's within the realm of statistical possibility.
I think that could happen because everything I'm reading and seeing from the people on the streets, they don't understand what they're voting for, the yes or no. I read what the people of Greece are getting. It could be a bit confusing if you don't understand exactly, the financial markets. So are they voting yes or no for the government? Are they voting yes or no to stay in the euro? I think certain people are going to the polls next Sunday and voting for different things. They need to be educated between now and then. I think a yes vote goes through, but a no could happen because they're uneducated.
Tammy, they're going to be educated because the way it's being sold to them has nothing to do with facts and figures, but it's all predicated on, hey, it's nationalism. It's the evil, stingy Greek Germans who once again have their boots on the throats of our necks. Mm-hmm. It's like, they want us to be a vassal state. They want us to be their indentured servants. It's that kind of rhetoric that seems to be resonating.
Look, a little while ago, the Greeks wanted reparations from the Germans for what happened in World War II. So that was really a rhetorical argument for the people to get all emotional.
Well, that was Varoufakis, and I don't think it was rhetorical. That guy is a nut.
Yeah, but still, that is the emotional line with politics. Politically, people will never vote against their interests. So the key becomes educating them about what their interests are. What Cyprus is doing is saying your interest is immediate. It is about your pension. It's about wages and things we've promised you. So there has to be a little bit of a larger framework where the people realize that you can vote yes and know that your interest is in the longer run. But at this point, there is such chaos. There seems to be no effort. And in the interest, for Cyprus's interest, his interest is self-preservation. He needs chaos, as socialists generally do. For Angela Merkel, it's about her legacy, about keeping the EU together. So here you've got politicians once again worrying about themselves, not about their governments.
All right, Scott.
It's not just a long-term thing. Even short-term, the Greek government spends more than it takes in. So the pensions are not safe under Cyprus any more than they would be under something else.
The pension's now 16% of GDP.
Right.
What's a reasonable number?
Maybe half that.
Really? But there's no way in the world that these pensioners can take a 50% haircut.
And nobody's proposing that.
I'd like to ask Wilbur a question. Is there any way constitutionally and legally that they could call off this referendum? If they announced the deal tonight, could they call off the referendum, or is their constitution such they're going to have to do it anyway?
I think they could probably call it off, but there will be no deal tonight. Mrs. Merkel has announced that she's not prepared to do any negotiating until after the vote.
Scotty Nell Hughes, you join us from Washington, D.C. We keep talking about the political angle here. It would seem to me that although Angela Merkel wants to protect her legacy, it's really Tsipras and his party that have the most to lose here. Ultimately, we think that will make them blink. What are your thoughts?
You're correct. And the whole deal about this is educating the people. They don't want to educate the people. They want this state of confusion. We see it all the time in politics. People sit there and don't want to actually know what's going on. I think this is what happens. You have this state of chaos. And talking about electing new officials, January 25th, this prime minister was elected. It's not like this all just came about. He knew what he was getting. He was elected because he promised these people a utopian society that it was going to continue. And guess what? He couldn't deliver on his promise. And that's what you're dealing with right now.
Although it's not uncommon in these countries, Italy, Greece, to have a couple of elections. and okay, you couldn't do it. Next, let's see. Someone's got the utopia in their back pocket. All right, guys.